Now, joining us to the panel discussion on the topic of MAPA are Reagan the statesman. Reagan is a climate justice activist from Uganda who focuses on climate-induced conflicts and migration, security, and climate racism, as well as colonialism and neocolonialism. By using their own experience with the climate crisis, Reagan provides a voice for people in similar situations. Reagan also stirs up awareness on social media for Fridays for Future MAPA and the Rise Up movement. Thank you for joining us, Reagan. Next on the list is Darren Namatovu. Darren is a 22-year-old human and children's rights and climate justice activist from Uganda. She's the founder of the Phoenix Children Foundation, an organization that advocates for children's rights, teaches children about climate change, and calls on world leaders and development partners to make the planet and world equitable for children, especially in the most affected areas. Thank you also to you, Darren, for joining our panel today. And last but not least, Joyce Koech is an environmentalist and climate activist from Kenya who started organizing neighborhood and beach cleanups as a response to the amount of plastic hurting the environment, while also raising awareness for this topic. She further started an organization that restores mangroves along the coastlines, which helps fight climate change. Joyce is also part of the Rise Up movement. Thank you, Joyce, for joining us today as well. So I guess a huge round of applause for our panelists joining us and for applauding. And now, starting with the first question, could any one of you please explain the concept of MAPA to us? What is MAPA? What do you think about this concept? Do you have the feeling it does justice to your position in the climate justice movement, or is it insufficient? Darren, would you like to start?
I should still muted, sir.
You're still muted?
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm called Darren Namatovu, 20-year-old climate activist and human rights activist from Uganda. To start with the first question, first of all, I would say, what is MAPA? How do you all define MAPA? What does it mean to us? If someone comes to you and they say, you're a MAPA activist, how would you describe yourself to that person? Okay, so for me, MAPA is, first of all, MAPA is most affected people and areas. That means that to me, MAPA is a movement that is put in place, or that is started to advocate and to raise voices of people in the global south, people that are affected by the worst impacts of the climate crisis, but we were not listened to, we were not represented on the international stage. That's what brought about the MAPA, and the whole concept of MAPA is to frontline the voices of people in the most affected areas, the people in the global south, the activists that come from MAPA who initially didn't have a say, didn't have a table, could not speak to the international stages, but because of MAPA, right now we can speak, we can raise our voices and be heard. So to me, MAPA is frontlining. That's what I understand by it.
Joyce, do you think this movement is sufficient, calling it MAPA? You're also muted.
Sorry. Hi, guys. My name is Joyce Koech from Kenya. I think, yes, it's very sufficient because through this movement, we are able to come together as people that are mostly affected, and in the most affected places. So I think it's very sufficient, and it has brought us together. It has united us, and it has made us not feel alone. For example, I'm from Kenya, and we have Darren and Reagan from Uganda. And they are also suffering the same. So it gives you the feeling of, you're not alone in this movement, and that together coming together just makes us stronger. Yeah.
Thank you. On this point, Reagan, could you tell how the Fridays for Future MAPA movement see itself within the global arena of climate activism? Do you think it is useful to connect those fights together, and with also your fights with other fights of climate activists, of people from most affected areas in the global south?
Thank you so much. My name is Reagan, the statesman, a climate activist from Uganda, and a member of Rise Up Movement and FF MAPA. Yes, when you look at the global climate arena, is always dominated by the global north. So, and now here comes the concept of MAPA. So, to me, I see that MAPA is reporting new stories that have not been told. MAPA is amplifying voices. It's helping people in the global south to reach out the most affected areas. And it is putting us activists from the global south on the international stage. And me, I see MAPA is very sufficient because previously our voices, we as activists from the global south, our voices have been limited on the international stage. But when you look at the global south, which is made up of Africa, Latin America, and some countries of Asia, you realize that the climate crisis affects us equally. It doesn't know whether you are from Kenya, whether you are from Uganda, whether you are from Nigeria, whether you're from South Africa, because we are facing almost the same challenges posed by the climate crisis. And being faced by these same challenges and us sharing the same pain of the crisis, we see that MAPA is connecting us. It is something that is bringing us together, and it is something that is bonding us together, and something that is giving us one uniting voice to ask for climate justice and a sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm already feeling enlightened just by listening to your answers. But what I'm really interested also is how did you become part of the MAPA movement? Like you already said, you are all part of the MAPA movement, but like also in your biography and in the development of your careers, how did it get so far that you got to be a part of it? Darren, would you like to answer?
Okay. I come from the global south. I think that automatically qualifies me to be a MAPA activist. And also, I became a MAPA activist, I think, after experiencing and witnessing the worst impacts of the climate crisis that my people have faced in my community, and probably maybe some of my family members have faced. So when I heard of FF MAPA, because it has been a very welcoming community that every activist has come out and wants to join and wants to speak up, it has been a very, very open platform. So I became a MAPA activist after, I think, experiencing the worst impacts of the climate crisis in my country, in my community, and the people that I advocate for, the children in the slum areas in the suburbs of Kampala. And also, I come from the global south. That automatically makes you a MAPA activist.
No truer words were ever spoken. How about you, Joyce?
So I became a MAPA activist, just like Darren has said, being, of course, and living in areas like in Kenya. Of course, you realize that you are the most affected by the effects of climate change. I also come from a community in Kenya that is very marginalized. It's called the Kalenjin community. They are pastoralists, and they mostly depend on livestock and farming to just for their daily lives. And when you see the effects of climate change that is happening right now, you can see that they are losing their livestock, they are losing their way of life. And livestock is not only just a source of income, it's our culture. And so when we lose livestock, we are losing part of who we are. So that really motivated me into coming out and voicing out the challenges that are being faced by my community. And also living in a city that is close to the ocean and feeling the direct effects of climate change, especially with the rise of the sea level, and with and also the effects of the heat waves that we are currently feeling, especially last year. We've had like a lot of people being affected health-wise by the severe heat waves that we are currently feeling in the city. So yeah, that's how I just started my activism and just joining Friday for Future and meeting people that have the same passion and people who just continuously just motivate you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And how about you, Reagan? How did you become part of MAPA, Fridays for Future MAPA?
Yes, one of the reasons that inspired me to join MAPA or to become a MAPA activist, one is experience. Experience in what way? I come from the eastern part of Uganda, and in my primary level throughout the 10 years, I was the day scholar coming from home and coming and going to school. And I'm someone who grew up under the good care of my grandfather. And my grandfather is a farmer, and at the same time, he keeps cattle. So what did this mean to me as the only grandchild who was growing at that time? It meant that whenever I would come back from school, it was my duty from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Grazing the cattle, grazing the animals, because the next day they would be needed for plowing in the garden. So, but this where I come from, it is one of the hottest districts in Uganda, districts hit by prolonged droughts. So we would go to the swamps, to the grazeland, look for pastures for these animals. But because of the droughts, because of the floodings at that time, you would find that there was scarcity of resources like water and pasture to feed these animals and satisfy the animals. So we as herdsmen, at the end of the day, would end up in conflict and fighting for the little resources available. And this was not good. It was not good. It was a tough experience. So this inspired me to become a MAPA activist, because I don't want others to go through what I went through, because I know the pain of what climate change caused to me those days and still causing in the communities where I come from. And then I became a member of MAPA to change the world, because climate change is affecting us all. And I am using my voice because I believe that God has called me to become a voice for those who are most affected by climate change, especially people from the global south. So I'm looking forward to a sustainable future for all people who are affected by climate change. And I want to achieve the climate justice, and that climate justice shouldn't be by 2030. it should be now. So that's why I'm using my voice as a MAPA activist.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your personal stories with us. The audience, the listeners are really banned and just looking and listening carefully to your voices. Maybe for you all, we parted the whole event into 3 sections. This was the introduction into MAPA. Now we're going into our second part, which will be going further into your forms of activism and how you are actually personally getting or getting active into these movements. And also, you already mentioned it earlier, maybe furthermore, how the effects show in your areas. Because you are also coming from 2 different countries, Uganda and Kenya. Can you just go even further into the topic, like how the climate effects are showing right now? You've already mentioned, like Reagan, you already mentioned a little bit how it has been in the past. But right now, the situation, how do you see it? What can you see it? What is the climate situation like in your country? And your personal life, how it has been affected by this, if you would like to. Darren, you can start again if you want.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you very much. Okay. To start with the climate situation in my country, I think the climate injustice is not just happening now, and I feel like it's something that is ongoing. It may not be affecting me directly, but somehow I find myself into the crisis. I find myself into, the climate injustices and all the atrocities that are coming with it. How? I'm a children's activist, I'm a human rights activist. It means I go into the slums, I go into the suburbs of some communities in my country. I see how, these people are suffering. That, like, recently, for the past, I think, like 18 months, we've been having devastating floods in my country, which have left people homeless. Children are unable to go to school. There is no food. Like, literally, to how does it affect my personal life? It doesn't affect me personally. Okay, or it may not affect me personally, but the people that I'm advocating for, like, I find myself, going into the field, donating food to people. Like, recently, actually yesterday, I was in Kasese. It's a district in Uganda, and it's one of the districts that is most affected by floods and I think droughts. So the refugees right now in Kasese that are camped there, they left their homes. Most of these refugees came from DRC and others came from Uganda, but they left their homes because of these devastating floods that took away their homes. So I realized that even if it's not coming to you direct as a person or as an activist, you find yourself into the situation, you find yourself into the crisis, because at the end of the day, you're going to go and, donate to these people, speak to them, like, be there for them, because all that the suffering they are going through right now is caused by the climate crisis, and it's what you're advocating for, you're calling for justice. So it's showing in my personal life a lot, because every day of my life I'm speaking about this. I'm reaching out to people who are affected by the climate crisis each and every day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a devastating situation, definitely. And Reagan, would you like to add something to the situation also in Uganda?
Yes, echoing on what Darren has just said. If you look at, because all of us, the panelists here, we come from the African region of East Africa. And climate change is already transforming every inhabited region in East Africa by driving observed changes in weather and causing widespread climate instability. The rapid burning of fossil fuels is bringing East Africa to a boiling point. Today, if you look at East Africa, we have the East African drought, and the East African drought is a catastrophe that has left thousands of people starving. It has caused poverty, displacement of people, aquatic life, animals, and everything you can think of in East Africa. And then in my city, Kampala, where I come from, where I stay, air pollution is now at its worst because Ugandans are now breathing to death. And then as this is still happening in Uganda, we are hearing and we are seeing the construction of the East African crude oil pipeline. And scientists and climate analysts and police and IPCC policymakers are telling us that the East African crude oil pipeline is estimated to be emitting over 34 million tons of carbon dioxide in the air than what we are emitting today. And this is not only a threat to Uganda, it's a threat to the entire region of East Africa because we are not safe. So if you look at East Africa, prolonged droughts are causing conflicts between herdsmen and farmers over scarcity of natural resources. So really, me as Reagan, this is affecting me as an activist and also as a citizen of East Africa. It is affecting me because first, I cannot breathe. Second, when I cannot breathe, I cannot fight for climate justice. And our activism against the East African crude oil pipeline, we have raised our voices, but you see countries like France, through their companies like Total and their banks, they have not given up. They have not given up on the project of funding the East African crude pipeline. But what I always ask my countrymen and what I always ask our leaders here, that this is coming, and we have already been warned of the dangers that it's about to bring in the country and in the region. But are we even ready for the aftermath of the East African crude oil pipeline? So that's the situation in Uganda. And if we don't act now, and if we don't unite in one voice, we are breathing to death.
Thank you so much. Showing this really, really problematic situation right now in Uganda, and seeing how East Africa is affected as a whole, and not just Uganda as a country. And still, I would like to ask you, Joyce, also, like in comparison to Uganda, how the situation in Kenya is, how, if you would like to go into that.
The climate change knows no boundaries, as in whatever it is that is happening in Uganda and whatever the pipeline that, of course, Reagan is talking about, it's going to affect me directly because we are neighbors, and whatever effects that Ugandans will be feeling, we are going to feel this. So me, I'm feeling the effects of climate change directly because I live in a city that, as I said, we're experiencing a lot of heat waves and also a lot of flooding that is actually that was being experienced like in 2018 and also in just a few 3 years ago. So you can what can I say? It's overwhelming, especially when you see your people suffering, and because you can also see that they're not the cause of. We are the least emitters of the gases that are now affecting climate change, and we are the ones that are now feeling the effects very much directly. The warming of the temperatures in Mombasa has also increased viruses like malaria, and dengue fever, and also another infection that we call chikungunya, that I have also suffered from, where you experience a lot of pain in your joints and you cannot even stand up. You have to like look for support, and all these are viruses that are caused because of the changing climate. So yeah, the effects have affected me very much directly, and not my community. And as I said, I come from a pastoralist community that are also experiencing the effects of climate change, like droughts, severe droughts, and from severe droughts we go to severe flooding. So I feel like there's nowhere to run. We just have to like come together and find the solution. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing these stories and the problems and the situations locally there in Uganda and Kenya. And seeing that you're not only active in Fridays for Future, MAPA, but also in other distinctive organizations. It just shows how deeply you care about this topic and how much it does affect you, because as you said, you can't run from it, and you get involved in every project. And I want to come to these projects as well. Darren, you're part of the Phoenix Children Foundation. Could you go into that topic? How do you connect the fight for climate justice with the children's fight, and what is the focus of your activism there as well? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we do in my organization, Phoenix Student Foundation, it's a very baby organization that I started last year after I think getting very concerned about children's rights and how they're not being represented well, or maybe listened to, or their needs taken care of on the global table. So after hearing everyone talking about the climate crisis, talking about how children are not being represented, I came up, it has always been like a dream of mine, something that I've always wanted to do. Just to be someone who speaks for children, because spoke for us, or maybe people who represented us, who helped us raise our voices when we were still young. Maybe things would have been different this time around, I believe. So after starting Phoenix Student Foundation, came to, advocate for children's rights. How do we do it? We teach children. First of all, we make them understand their rights, and we also make them understand what's happening in the world right now. And one of the things that are happening right now is the climate crisis. And we are fighting for these children. We are not fighting for ourselves, if you are to be honest with each other. We are youth, we are young people, but at the end of the day, we are fighting for our generation and the generation that is below us, and those are the children. And if we cannot teach them to also understand the crisis right now and how they can, take care of the environment, how they can maybe also try to live in an environment that is equitable for them, and also demand justice. This is a movement. Climate justice is, for all of us. We need to go back to the grassroots, teach children what their rights are. So you don't just find a children playing on a tree that is planted right there, and this kid wants to uproot it. She or she needs to understand that this is a tree that at one time is going to save me, at one time is going to give me a fruit if I want to eat it, at one time is going to give me shade. So we are teaching these children that however, we are fighting for you, but it also starts with you. And it's also your mandate and your responsibility to fight and call on world leaders to to make things right, to make this world equitable for you. So we are teaching children, we are taking the climate gospel in schools, teaching children about planting trees, doing, learn books like climate literature, teaching them with animation like books that can help them learn about the climate change and how they can be able to do something about it. Because if we don't teach these people, me personally, I didn't know about activism until I was put in a situation to understand what I need to do and what activism is. So with Phoenix, we are focusing more on children's rights, and I believe one of those rights are to have an equitable planet. And yeah. So how am I connecting my activism to the organization? I speak as an activist, but also as a founder for children's rights. So we go back to I connect the projects and we come together. So if I'm organizing an event, or maybe a tree planting or cleaning event, I'm going to go to a school, ask for these children to work with them. I'm doing my job as an activist, but I'm also working with children because this is their organization and this is their right. This is part of the organization. So at the end of the day, I'm working closely with children, but also pushing the activism message and call that I'm on.
Thank you so much. I can completely agree on that part of the education of children, especially on that topic, and so thankful to you for your activism also in that field, educating the younger generation on these topics and the urgency of this topic as well. And coming to Joyce and Reagan, you're also part of the Rise Up movement, because activists like you not only just stay at one place, but have to work on many different organizations. Joyce, can you maybe go into the topic of the Rise Up movement, explain what the Rise Up movement is and how you got into it as well, and how this connects to the fight of climate justice?
So how I got into the Rise Up movement was just through connecting and sharing the problems that we are all facing. And right now I'm into advocating and creating awareness on how especially climate change and conflict, because that is climate change has really made conflicts a major problem right now that we are facing, especially in the country and also in Uganda. I'm going back by also saying that I also come from a community that are pastoralists, and I also understand how conflict, we are also experiencing, not only are we experiencing climate change, we're also experiencing a lot of conflicts that are coming due to now the effects of climate change. We're seeing a lot of people migrating to different places and staying there for longer. So you'll find that a lot of people are now fighting for resources, and that has led to a lot of conflicts. That has led to a lot of people dying, and it has also affected a lot of women, because when we see all these conflicts, the people that are mostly affected are women and children. So that is how I joined in the Rise Up movement. I personally, as an individual, I also take part in tree planting and also going to school and educating about the climate awareness. I also take part in, which is one of my also really big passions, is planting mangroves, because we also understand that mangroves are also a powerful way of just mitigation, because they sequester a lot of carbon from the air. They help the coastal communities from like hurricanes, and they also purify the water. So that is part of my activism, and yeah, that's what I do.
And the same question to you, Reagan. How's it being a part of the Rise Up movement, and how do you show your activism in that course?
First of all, Rise Up movement is a movement of climate activists in Africa, founded by one of Africa's climate justice icons, Vanessa Nakate. I joined Rise Up movement. It was last year during COP26, when I heard Africa's climate justice icons like Vanessa Nakate, Evelyn Acham, Joshua Omonuk, when they were talking about the climate crisis in Africa and in the global South. And me being a victim of this crisis, I was able to connect. So I was inspired, and I found myself into the Rise Up movement to become another voice. And the Rise Up movement does, it amplifies voices of other activists to be heard on national level, continental level, and on the international climate global arena. So what do we do in Rise Up movement? Rise Up movement has so many activities that we do. For example, Vanessa has the Green Project, where she's visiting schools and communities, installing solar panels to reduce on the emissions, because in Uganda, schools use firewood for cooking, and this is pollution. So what Vanessa is doing is installing solar panels and solar stoves to help to cut these emissions that are in schools and communities in Africa. And then we also have the Plus One Tree project, which is under Evelyn Acham, where we move to communities in Uganda, supplying fruit trees to families, to communities, because we believe that trees first help to cut the carbon emissions that we are having today and which we are facing on the African continent. They provide this shade, and since we are trying to save life, a tree also is like, it is a symbol of life. So we are rebuilding life, we are rebuilding communities. So that is majorly about Rise Up movement and how we connect with other activists. Because Rise Up movement has activists on the African continent. So when we are planting trees here in Uganda, it means that all other activists in the rest of the African countries are planting trees at that particular time and that particular day. So Rise Up movement, it brings us together as a continent, because we do activities as a united continent and a united generation. That's how we are able to connect with everyone on the African continent. And Vanessa being the founder of this movement and having other icons like Evelyn Acham and Joshua Omonuk, we are able to connect with activists in the global north. So if we look at our awareness on Twitter, we are always connecting with the global north, like the Fridays for Future, School Strike for Climate by Greta Thunberg. So yeah, that is how Rise Up movement operates, and that is how Rise Up movement is amplifying our voices on the global climate arena.
Thank you so much for sharing. And going deeper into this, you have all already mentioned things that you're doing and changes that you're already impacting through your work. For instance, like Darren talked about education of children. Joyce, you said like planting mangroves and securing livelihood there. Reagan also like through the connection to people and also to particular tasks you do to see changes. I want to focus now in this question on the positives outcomes so far, what you've reached maybe so far, not just about I mean, it's a very optimistic view, but seeing how everything goes downwards, but also the local impacts your activism has, and that shows that being active on this topic can actually help. Yeah, Darren, would you like to say some words?
I think I can go first. Okay, so about the positive impacts, I mean the results, the good results of this activism. Right now, I mean, let's start with us, with me, and everyone else in this audience. We realize right now we are hard. The fact that we are coming from MAPA and we can still speak and get heard on a global, on an international stage, even though we are not very well represented. I mean, we are not given those platforms, but at least right now, a MAPA activist can stand on a stage and they speak truth to power and they get heard. That's an achievement. That's a one positive achievement right now to be grateful for, because we are represented. We can speak, we can air out our frustrations, how we feel, and we get heard, even though it's hard for them to listen, but at least they listen. And the other thing on local levels, realize right now people can plant trees. You can tell a person that, you know what, the only way you're going to survive is to plant a tree. You're not supposed to cut it. If you cut it, you're either going to, get floods, or you're going to live in a very, very hateful, environment. So people are now learning to learn to plant trees. People are now learning to care for the environment. You tell them that, you know what, you're not supposed to just dump everything wherever you're putting it, because you're causing air pollution, you're causing water pollution, and if you're causing it, they're not only impacting you, but you're devastating the environment of everyone else that is living in your local area. So taking the climate gospel to children, to people in local communities, it has helped. People are digesting to live with, because if you tell a person that if you don't do this, you're going to die, who wants to die? No one wants to die. So realize people are going to people are starting at least to understand that the climate crisis is here, and the only way to live without it is to, collaborate and work together, at least to see that at least we can have, an equitable world that we all want, that we all are trying to fight for, even though the global north is not listening to us. But at least if we can do something for ourselves before we get to them, we can save ourselves. So to me, the positive impacts have been like, the people waking up, because honestly, I didn't know that even climate change is an issue. But you first need to experience it, or like now you go to people who are faced with floods, people who are living in a very, very crazy, communities, very vulnerable communities, marginalized communities. If you go and speak to these people and you tell them, if we can do better, if you can do this and this, maybe life would be a little easier before we wait for the global north to act. How about we start with ourselves? So teaching people that it starts with us, it has helped a lot with, it has been an impact to me personally. I feel like it has been an impact, because if we don't start with ourselves, who is going to do it for us? And also teaching children, and also involving children, that the crisis is here. We are not only fighting for you, but we are also experiencing it. So how about we work together, and how about you also understand that these are your rights? You deserve a very equitable and harmless planet. You want to grow up in a planet that is, good for you, cool for you to live in. So taking the climate gospel to schools has also helped in very many ways, because now even schools, you realize even schools without us activists going there, Schools now are learning to teach children how to plant trees. You go to teachers, you tell them that, you know what, this is a crisis that is happening right now. Leave alone the geography that you're teaching children, but teach them the realities that are happening right now. Teach them how to plant trees. Teach them not to dump, plastics, polythenes wherever they dump, because at the end of the day, it's going to come back to them. So taking also the climate gospel in schools to children, it has also helped. It has been like a positive impact, in my opinion, because at least we are a huge like group of people that are fighting the same crisis, and the future seems bright if we continue doing this.
Thank you so much for sharing.
And can I add also what she said? I think for me, I have seen a really big change in what we're doing, especially when it comes to the plantation of mangroves. Because before we began, a lot of communities were cutting mangroves because mangroves are a source of hardwood. And because they didn't know the value that mangroves have, not only in the environment, but also economic-wise, there were also benefits. Of course, they were benefiting from mangroves because of the large biodiversity that you find in that whole ecosystem, but also by just involving them, because when you involve the communities, they're not just only partners, they're also like beneficiaries of this whole ecosystem. So we have seen a lot of changes. We have involved schools, and we have not only made just a mangrove a part of, like it's compulsory, which also a lot of fun, because a lot of people learn so much, and just being in that whole ecosystem is so much fun. We make it a lot of fun so that they can come the next time. And we have seen a lot of positive outcomes in terms of just this area. And also on the global side, we've seen people like, as Reagan said, people like Vanessa Nakate, who she's such an inspiring lady, and she's such a powerful voice to the MAPA region. So yeah, there's still a lot more, and I think MAPA voices should be given a lot of opportunities, and especially people, communities, because the IPPC report, it recognizes the value of diverse forms of knowledge, such as scientific and indigenous and local knowledge in building resilience. So I think it's really important to just, every activity that you do, it's really important to just involve the communities, because they play such a big role in just maintaining the trees, protecting the mangroves, and whatever it is that you are trying to advocate for.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's really beautiful to see that you can assemble such a human power of people who join your fight and who actually see the importance in this fight. But obviously, as you've already explained, due to the really terrible and horrific situation right now, but also like they see the problem, they see the urgency, and they try to change things. I think in this part, we here in Germany can still learn a lot and not try to avoid these harsh topics. What I want to actually also know is, because you are in so many different groups and so on, are you three also connected personally? Do you talk to each other? Do you see each other? Do you meet each other? Yeah, and definitely most likely in your fight for the climate justice movement, but also like in their private sphere and so on. So I'd be really interested in that as well. Whoever wants to talk may talk.
I'll go first. Sorry. I've never met them. Actually, this is my first time seeing Darren, and what a wonderful work that you are doing. I'm definitely inspired. especially that you're working with kids, because I work with kids as well. It's really nice to meet you. I'm also in very contact with Reagan, although I have never met him personally, but because we're in the same organization, Rise Up Movement, Reagan has been a really great mentor. He's full of knowledge in terms of just climate change, and I have been like really learning a lot from him. So I hope that one of these days we meet personally. That would be really fun. I would really love to meet all of you. But right now it's just like the internet and the other world is just working for us.
Reagan. Like Darren and Reagan, have you met actually?
No, actually, not, unfortunately, because I think the pandemic really messed, I think, our lives a lot. Realize before the pandemic, we could gather, it was very possible for us to meet, but now, ever since the pandemic started, I think we are now also, some people are scared to do gatherings. We are scared to go out and meet people, and also some of us I feel like the economic status is really not well. You realize I would want to travel from Uganda to go to Kenya and meet Joy, but I'm unable to do that because I can't maybe right now purchase an air ticket to go to Kenya. And also we are in different movements, but happy to reconnect with everyone here, and possibly we could meet soon.
Okay, so if you're ever going to meet up, please give me a call. I want to meet all of you in person as well.
We'll be very excited.
Just fangirling here. Oh, so sorry for that. But yeah, I would also now again come to more dark topics about. You've all mentioned it already that. The situation or the gravity of the situation hasn't started just a few years ago, but it has been an ongoing process and still ongoing. And a huge connection is also obviously to the colonial past of the global North and the problems that the colonialism and post-colonialism, especially, or post-colonialism, has brought or still bringing to MAPA and to the so-called global South. So maybe my question to Reagan as well, because it's also one of your specialties. The process of the Industrial Revolution and rapid economic growth of European and North American countries, which are heavy polluters and those who are emerging the most CO2 and other greenhouse gases, was enabled by colonialism, imperialism, and how do you see these structures still in the present? And how are they connected? Obviously connected to the climate change.
Yes, that is a very good topic and a very good philosophy when we are discussing about climate change and the effects of colonialism and post-imperialism on climate change. Colonialism. Post-imperialism or post-colonialism, this is a period, we look at period after independence, when the British Empire comes to an end and gives countries of Africa, Asia, independence. So we see that so many decisions were made along this period, which have contributed to the climate crisis, because after 1945, America became the world's dominant power, and America, being a product of European civilization, was a source of empathy and affinity between the old world and the new world. And if you look at America's foreign policy, it is dominated by the coal and oil revolution. And this coal and oil revolution, it is a continuation of the old order in form of America's new order of globalization. So when we are talking about climate change and post-colonialism, we see these structures are still very prevalent in America's foreign policy, which is dominated by oil and coal revolution. And America being the global key player in international affairs, you find that America over centuries is dictating the policies to be played by others on the international arena. So America being a dictator, being a bully, we are seeing that it is some kind of neocolonialism, which is a continuation of colonialism. And this kind of neocolonialism is having devastating effects on millions of people in the world. So climate change and post-colonialism, you must understand that the effect of post-colonialism or post-imperialism on climate change is a topic that has not received adequate scrutiny. Empire is one of the factors that are significant in the rise of the fossil industry. And the complicated connection between empire and conservation makes it difficult to reconcile climate change and post-imperialism. Post-imperialism today continues to shape a looming, it continues to shape a looming crisis of climate change that is especially manifesting on the nations of the global south that are most affected by the climate crisis. And when you look at post-imperialism and the climate crisis, you realize that post-imperialism and on the climate crisis, it is bringing worrying social, economic, environmental, and racial conditions that were started, fostered, and thrived during the colonial period. So that is how imperialism and post-colonialism is influencing climate change, because we have never seen these structures going away. It is like after independence, Africa or the nations of the global south became an extension of their former colonizers. And you realize that the umbilical cord between us and the global south, the global north, has never been cut. And whenever we try to cut it, we realize that the umbilical cord is made up of steel. So America's foreign policy is bringing the global south to a boiling point, and whereby America, like the West and America, in their fossil fuel industry and their fossil fuel industrialization or revolution, they care less about the global south, because when our leaders, the ones we have in power, they don't have the capacity to act, they don't have the capacity to oppose the capitalistic system, which was created by colonization, and it still continues today in form of the New World Order formed by the United States after 1945. So whenever our leaders try to do something, they fear threats like sanctions, international isolation. So really, it's really unfair. And yet, you look at the global south, it contributes less to the climate crisis, and yet they are the most affected, but they cannot even make decisions on their own on the international arena. So that is how I look at post-imperialism and climate change.
you've put it all together in very few words, this whole complicated situation. Thank you so much for going into that. And if I may, I would like to ask a further question, or a question on that note as well, because colonialism is heavily based on racial or racist ideas. Also that you've mentioned America and the foreign policies of America, which are only in the interest of not just America or North America, but also in Europe. And seeing that a few days ago in the US, there was also a shooting where 10 people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, were killed. How do you see the connection also between climate justice and racial justice, and also like the point of racism as well? Reagan, if you would like to go into
that. Yes, there's a very strong intersection between racial justice and climate justice, and of course, climate injustice and racial injustice. Climate change is the result of a legacy of extraction, of slavery, of colonialism, and now neocolonialism. With the arrival of slavery and colonialism, we saw repurposing of land, deforestation, disrupting of water systems, and other ecological systems that came with supporting the capitalist society to provide resources for the privileged, and the bodies of Africans were used to facilitate that. The same thing happened with indigenous lands. Indigenous lands were stolen, and they were not stolen for the purpose of expansion, but for the purpose of extraction of mountains to get the gold and to dig out the fossil fuels. And when I think about the people who received the worst food, the worst healthcare, the worst treatment, and when freed, were given lands surrounded by petrochemical industries. So the idea of racism and the idea of killing Black people is centered on the long history of capitalism and colonialism that was built in the past. And it was a years back when I realized that we cannot breathe. And if we can't really breathe, we cannot fight for climate justice. Our people are suffering from a long history of asthma and respiratory diseases. And our people have been struggling for the right to breathe for generations. And today, if you look at the world today, we activists from the MAPA regions and we people of color, we Blacks and people of color and indigenous people, we cannot breathe when the police is using chokeholds against Black protesters in the United States. We cannot breathe when Hurricane Katrina is affecting Black communities in New Orleans. So we cannot breathe when Hurricane Harvey is affecting Black communities in the districts of Houston. So we can't breathe, and you need to realize and you need to understand the economics. And once you understand the economics, you come to realize that climate change is a child of extraction, slavery, colonialism, and neocolonialism. And once you understand that concept, and once you come in terms with that concept, you come to agree with me that racial justice cannot be achieved without addressing the climate crisis.
Thank you so much for explaining, and hear that, white people. I'm just kidding, but thank you so much for going into this So you've explained the structure behind this whole climate injustice as well, like that colonialism, neocolonialism, capitalism, slavery, and so on played a huge role in the point where we are now today. Maybe Joy, can you say, like, what do you think, in your opinion, in your eyes, is the responsibility of the global North now, now that the global North is actually causing the problems, not just by emission, but also by structural political abuse of many countries in the global South? What kind of responsibilities do the countries of the global North have?
Because they are the major problem, and they are the major polluters. So I think the one thing that is, I'm not going to say a lot, but the one thing that is really important is for the inclusion of the MAPA people in the decision making. You cannot make these decisions of people, of problems that you don't know. You understand? So it's really important that in this summits, in this conferences, that MAPA people should be really involved, because you are trying to solve the problems, and if they're not there, then you don't feel the pain that we are feeling, because you are nicely seated in nicely looking offices. So it's really important to put MAPA people in the decision making, and to also keep your promises, and help MAPA regions to just to help them with the effects that they are feeling right now, like fund the projects, and just lend a hand in hand, because we are suffering so much for effects that we did not cause. Yeah.
Thank you, Joyce. Darren, also a follow-up question for you. Do you think that the voices of MAPA countries are considered enough? Do you think countries like Uganda and Kenya are, now that the discussions and the discourses are going on, are involved into decision making? And if not so, what are aspects, in your opinion, that are still missing out? Yes. You're still muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. To answer that, I personally think the MAPA people, the MAPA activists are not heard. We are not listened. We are not given enough platform that we really want. Because if they really listened enough, I feel like, we are very many people. We have very many activists that come from the most affected areas. Right now, they should have listened already. They should have listened already, and they should have acted if they really cared, because very many activists have spoken. You've seen activists who have been given an opportunity to be on the international stages from the MAPA. They've spoken, they've aired out their frustrations, and they've been vulnerable. But even after them being vulnerable, they're not heard. Nothing is being done. So I feel like we are not listened to enough. Nothing is done yet, because if they listened, right now they would be acting, but they're just listening and doing nothing. So the best thing to do is listen and act. Give MAPA activists the platform they deserve, because this crisis is affecting us. We are the people that have faced, actually, we are the people that really deserve a table, because everything that is happening is affecting us directly. We are facing these consequences of the climate crisis that we didn't even bring about. If they're not willing to listen to us, they're just going to listen and say, we are going to do this and just promise. How is that even? And some injustice that they talk about. So in my opinion, I feel like, no, we are not, because if they did, I mean, you saw COP26, there are very many activists from MAPA. What did they do? All they did was listen and, I mean, sweet talking them that, hey, we are going to act, you're going to do this and this. They did nothing. So it's time for them to just stop listening and just not look at us as Black people, as vulnerable people from these, I mean, poor countries, but people who are seriously caring about our future, our environment, and our planet. And to some question, what did you say again?
The second question, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I forgot it as well.
Sorry.
It's okay. Maybe like what specific items, what specific demands from Uganda, for instance, are missing in your, like what viewpoints from Uganda are missing?
I think what we're missing right now is, first of all, we miss equal representation on the global stage. We are very many activists from Uganda, from Kenya, from Tanzania, from Germany, wherever we are coming from as MAPA people. We are very many. But one thing that we lack first is global representation on on that stage, because each activist has a story. Maybe if all activists were given an opportunity to speak, maybe these people would feel, compassion in their hearts to understand that, hey, this person is facing the same thing, this one and this, and are all having the same story. So it means this situation is real. And another thing is we lack authentic, clear reporting of what is really happening in the world. What they are showing us is not what we want to see. Let them show us what is really happening. Let them report about the exact climate crisis that is happening right now in the world. When Uganda is facing a storm, they are very fast to capture the floods that are in Uganda, but are not able to do that they're not able to act about those floods that are happening in Uganda. How? We lack climate funding, because if right now the floods that are devastating, that are leaving people homeless in Uganda, are caused by all the atrocities that are from the climate inaction from the global north, they would be coming to give these people at least homes to live in, because this is their cause. Whatever is happening is because of them. But recently, I've been following the refugees in the refugee policy in Rwanda that are supposed to be put in the UK, and the UK government is saying they cannot put them in Rwanda. I mean, why? They cannot welcome them to the UK. I mean, why? Rwanda may not be experiencing right now the crazy climate crisis right now, but it's under MAPA. It's like Uganda. Rwanda is literally like Uganda. So if that happens in Uganda right now, because right now we have refugees that came from DRC running away from the political instabilities, the killings, the massacres that are happening. So if can the UK or maybe America come out and say, we are going to host the refugees from Uganda to our country? They can't do that. They can't. But what is making people move from their countries? It's all coming from the atrocities of their actions, their climate inaction. But they cannot welcome us. So why can they do that if they can't at least put up a settlement for these people? That's the least they can do. That's the climate funding we want. That yes, they admit that this has been caused by them. So let them take care of these people, but they're not doing that. At least let them give us accountability of something that they are doing. Let them feel the compassion of everything that is going on. but I feel like we are not even heard, we are not listened, we are not, I mean, I don't know. It's really crazy. So yeah.
I mean, all you can do right now is just to summarize the problem. It's a way bigger picture, as you've already said, and a way bigger problem. And I think 5 minutes are not enough to comprehend this whole topic. Just for me, how many minutes do we have left?
10.
Okay, good. Because we still want to give the audience also the possibility to ask questions if there are any. If not, I've got still questions, so don't worry about that. But I would give the listeners the opportunity to ask their questions. Just keep in mind, respectful, not being racist or something like that. Just, you know, the usual stuff as you should ask. Yeah, what's the question?
I was just wondering to what extent your specific organizations were related to or in connection with the African Union. They are very involved in impacts. And if you could say what you mentioned that say more about IDPs specifically, so internet displaced people in your specific countries.
Could you hear the question, or should I repeat?
Yes, repeat for.
No, please, can you repeat it?
Obviously, no problem. Well, so the question was, the organizations you've mentioned, do they have any connection to the African Union, and how the situation is about the internally displaced people in your country? These are two questions in one question, two parts in one question. Yeah. If someone wants to answer.
I think I can answer that, though I really didn't get it very well. The question is, are organizations connected to the African Union? Is that a question?
Yes,
okay.
That is part of the question.
Okay, I'll speak on behalf of Phoenix Student Foundation. Right now, we are not connected to the African Union, but we are working on that. We are working on enlarging our partnerships and our connections to, raising very many voices. And yeah, so we are not connected to the African Union, but we are working on that maybe very soon.
Okay. And how about the Rise Up movement, Reagan?
Echoing on what Darren has just said, the Rise Up movement is not in direct touch with the African Union, but we support and we stand with any MAPA activist and any African activist who is bringing out the climate crisis issue on the African continent and all MAPA regions. So when African Union comes and talks about climate change and gives us a report on climate change, yes, we come out as Rise Up movement to support and to add a voice on what the African Union is telling us. Yes.
Thank you. And the second part of the question was regarding the internally displaced people and how the situation maybe in your specific countries is.
Okay, can I go first? Okay, sure. So sure, thank you very much. Okay, so we have like people right now in our country that came in from, I think they came in about 2 months ago. They came from DRC, that's like the Congo. After, I mean, there are very many political instabilities, insecurities. I mean, people are being killed for no reason. I was there yesterday, had gone with a group of other NGOs that are working towards the well-being of people, donating. We donated to them some food items, we donated to them some clothing, some healthy equipments. But the situation is really overwhelming. People are hopeless. It looks like, for them, it looks like life is over, because we were not even given, the security is really tight. We were not given an opportunity to interact with them because of their mental health. And maybe, you don't know what you're going to say to a person, and you don't know what the person really wants to hear in that moment. So it's really a very critical condition right now. Then the fact that Uganda is the only country that welcomed them and has been able to accommodate them, and we don't have, we don't have like enough funding to take care of these people. There is no enough settlement, enough land to accommodate them. We found these people in a kind of like a school playground. They were put there, gazetted for like a specific period of time to stay there as the government figures out where they're going to put them. But my question is, why does it have to get to, to this point? Why do people have to really leave their country? We cannot really understand what made these people leave their country right now. We have very many refugee settlements in Uganda right now, but the current one is these people that came from Congo. And yeah, it's a very critical and overwhelming situation right now, and we call upon all people, all international organizations and activists to speak upon against instabilities, and to the international community, the UK governments, the American governments, to welcome these people into their countries. If they can care for them for even a year or even a month or even a few months, it could really be great, because we realize war and any crisis affects all of us at the same time. So it's about Ubuntu, what we call Ubuntu, brotherhood. Yeah.
Thank you. The second question was?
More general question, do you think, does this have an influence that, for example, the United Nations headquarters for climate change in Bonn, here in Germany, many of these COP conferences, they are in the last year's Katowice, Madrid, in this year also Glasgow, is in Egypt, but maybe to locate one of these offices to the Global South. Could this have an influence to then these problems are more reflected, or concerns of them of the Global South more reflected and brings to the forefront?
Okay, so the question was, please correct me if I'm wrong. The question was if institutions like COP conferences and so on, and other institutions of the UN in regards of climate change and so on, would actually be happening on African country and include the people locally there more? Would that make a difference or influence the situation locally?
Because now it seems like that it's dictated again from the north, like we have here the headquarters for speaking about climate change. But where is it actually happening in the south?
Yeah. So the normatives, the rulings, everything regarding happening there in the conferences and so on is, as the person has said, are being dictated from the global north, but the global south has to fulfill those policies and demands the conferences are actually giving. So do you think it would actually make a difference if these institutions, organizations, events, meetings, and so on would first of all be happening in Africa, and second of all include the voices of MAPA and Global South more? Like, do you think that would actually make a difference? Joyce, Reagan, whoever wants.
Yes, I think it will make a difference because COP27 taking place in Africa, and Africa being part of the Global South, and Africa being the most affected continent by the climate crisis, yet Africa contributes to less than 4% of the global emissions. I think this is an opportunity for Africa and an opportunity for African activists to demonstrate their potential. Because one thing that has been a problem to us in Africa, we never believe in ourselves. And when you don't believe in yourself, you don't expect other civilizations to respect you. So COP27 is an opportunity for all of us activists from Africa and activists from the MAPA regions to demonstrate that we have greater potential and to show the global north that we are really affected by the climate crisis and we are serious about this and we are ready to propel the global south to the climate justice that we need. But for this to happen, for this change to happen, the terms and conditions must be equal. The global south first, the global north should stop dictating the terms as the terms that were dictated in COP27. So this time around, the global south should not be treated in the manner of a horse and the rider, with the global south being the horse and the riders being the global north. So Africa should be given equal opportunity and Africa should be respected at the table of decision-making about the global climate crisis. And African voices should be listened to during COP27. And we don't expect a session of COP26 whereby leaders from the global north gave us all their promises and we are coming towards COP27. We see more empty promises and we see more of the same happening. So they should come with clear answers and they should come with good answers to the global south, because one of the things that the global south needs is climate finance and funding of activists from the global south to attend COP26. So equal representation and equal opportunity will make COP27 a positive international climate summit for all MAPA affected regions. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Can I say something?
Sure, of course.
Okay. Okay. The person in the audience asked if these institutions getting the climate, the getting the COP27 to Africa would really be an achievement for us. To start with, I feel like it could be an achievement, but it will only be an achievement if they really come to COP27 in Egypt and actually put to action everything that they would say, because right now what we really don't want is them to come to Egypt in Africa and make them all the empty promises. So the person in the audience, I think, really wanted to know if this is really an achievement for us. It's not an achievement until it's achieved. So we want them to come to Africa. We want them to come to Egypt and really act. We just don't want them to come and make the same old promises they made in Glasgow. That's not what we want. So we are looking forward to them in Egypt, but we really want them to act as they speak right now, because they are going to come to Africa and experience some of the hits that we are experiencing right now. They're going to come to Africa and really, they may be there for a few days. They'll experience what it means to live in Africa, even if it means 1 day or 2 days. So we want them to feel that experience, and after feeling it, we want them to act. So, as the person in the audience, it would really be an achievement if we only acted. So we don't have any achievement them acting upon their promises and what I can add on Reagan is.
Thank you so much.
And I also want to add into that. For COP26, as Darren had said, it's not an achievement because it's just a change of location. Although we are really grateful that it's also coming to Africa, but it's not just come to Africa and then still not keep to your promises. It will just be like, we just change the location. You want to come to Africa, then we're coming to Africa. If you want to come to Africa, and then you have to listen to our voices and actually act upon your promises. So I think that's the only thing I can say.
Okay, due to time restrictions, if there is no further question from the audience, it doesn't seem like that. I would just ask you a really, really rapid round, maybe one sentence each person. If you have any words for the future, any hopes and wishes, and maybe, I know it's hard, but like a demand that you can put in one sentence, maybe also to the audience here sitting and listening to that, because even the people here right now in the Global North, every one of us, each of us is in a powerful situation. So what would you like to convey to them?
Can I go first? I think I would have like two statements. I think one would be we can do better. We can really do better. It all starts with us. It all starts with feeling and understanding, and I mean taking everything that is happening right now to heart. The other thing is, embracing authenticity. Let's be honest. Let's get down in our rooms and feel the consequences of the climate crisis right now. Let's embrace authenticity in everything that we do. Maybe that's when we can achieve the climate justice that we want. We want our leaders to practice compassionate authenticity for just a year, and they see how it goes. So to me is, we can do better, and let's embrace authenticity in every way possible that we can. That's how maybe we can solve, part of the climate crisis, this crisis that we're having right now.
Joyce?
Yes, my closing remarks. I have a message to all world leaders, and especially world leaders who were the key decision makers and the key negotiators at COP26 that happened last year. They should know that we are a wave of a new generation of activists ready to propel the global South and the planet to environmental renewal and rebuilding our planet, which has been destroyed by the devastating effects of climate change. So we are not going to give up, and we are not giving up on this climate war and this climate fight. We want justice, and this justice must be brought by world leaders, because they are the key players. They make the decisions of coal, oil, fossil fuels that have become a disaster human life, aquatic life, animal life, and plant life. So they are the key players, and we are not going to give up. We shall keep raising our voices, and our voices must be heard until our voices are heard, until climate justice is on our table, until we receive climate finance, until we receive equal opportunities, until the global South is respected and treated as a diner on the decision on the table of civilization, and until climate change does not bring us to the doom of human civilization, we are keeping up the fight, and we shall continue fighting until we achieve. And we choose, all of us, MAPA activists, we choose to stand on the right side of history. Thank you.
And I think the closing remarks for me is for the world leaders to listen, to actually just listen and to have compassion. They are also they also have families, and I feel like if they could only listen to the people that are mostly affected by this, then they would make better, not even better decisions, but they would speed up the action when it comes to just climate change. For me, is, as Reagan says, that we are not going to give up until we see climate justice, and that's just the only thing that I have to say.
Thank you so much. I'm just in awe and admiration. It was a pleasure seeing you, hearing you, listening to you, and thank you for your activism. Thank you for all the work you're doing, for the important work, and just thank you very much. And